So my name's Gavin Allwright. I'm the Secretary General of the International Windship Association, and we are a collection of over 50 full members and a similar number of associates and registered supporters, basically promoting and bringing into the market wind propulsion solutions for commercial shipping. So not the beautiful yachts you've got out there, but the bulkers, the tankers, the container ships, etc. For this presentation, I'm going to go through very quickly what wind propulsion can actually do. I'll touch on the technologies, and then I'll start giving you some ideas of some recent projects and the update of where we are today. So, what can the wind actually deliver? If we have a 1.5 degree target for restricting global warming, basically every single vessel that we're building today, designing and building today, will be operating in a net zero emissions world, meaning every single ton of carbon coming out of that smokestack by the end of its life will have to be paid for, and paid for quite substantially. I think we're pretty far off that at the moment, but things are accelerating and getting better. What can it deliver? Well, a lot of people ask me this. What's the market size? What are we likely to be seeing here? I like to use other people's words. There was an EU report at the beginning of 2017 that basically looked at if we had technologies coming into the market this year or over this next 12 months, we'd be looking at between 3,700 and 10,700 installations of wind propulsion on vessels in the container, bulker, and tanker markets. That's fairly substantial. The UK Clean Maritime Plan, which was released in July 2019, included wind propulsion forecast, looking at it being around 350 million euro, 300 million pound market per year over the next decade, accelerating to a 2 billion pounds market per year in the 2050s. That's equivalent. They were looking at air lubrication being similar. Alternative fuels would be around about an 8 billion pound market there. So, substantial, probably 20% of the propulsive technology coming in. So very quickly, what is wind propulsion? Okay, it's a primary renewable, meaning it's delivered to the ship with no infrastructure. It can basically provide between 5 to 20% as a wind assist retrofit on vessels today. We've just had announcements of Maersk tanker with 2 rotors on her at 8.2% savings on an exact operational comparison, and that's over a year. Of course, you can actually save a lot more if you start weather routing and actually operating her in a slightly different operational profile, for example, with speed. No new infrastructure needs to be put in, and we're looking at, you can have primary wind vessels, of course, which would be 50% plus, probably on the smaller vessels, small to medium-sized vessels rather than the very large ones. Installation. A lot of people say, okay, so what about the ROIs? They're not going to work on HFO being so cheap as it is. Absolutely. But Lloyd's Register did an assessment of this back in 2015, basically looking at around about $600 per ton of fuel. The ROIs start to make sense, 3 to 4 years. Of course, under 3 years, that would make the industry much happier. But leasing. We actually have a couple of our members looking at leasing of the equipment, just as they do with engines onto large airliners. Actually leasing the wind propulsion systems on there, and even renting, because we have a couple of containerized versions of these systems, which you'll probably see in a minute. Very quickly, we're also talking about facilitating the sort of transition to renewable fuels as well. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more detail on the next slide. But basically, you're looking at 20+% of your fuel component being reduced by including wind assist on your vessels. That's 20% less fuel that you need to buy for the entire length of that ship's operations, 20 potentially more years. Okay, so you're actually future-proofing as well. And that brings me on to the last point. Nobody has a crystal ball. I remember when we set up International Windship Association, November 2014, the peak of the oil price. I think literally we triggered the decline in that oil price because those rosy days were gone. Interestingly, we've increased from 12 technology providers up to over 35 during that period. So regulation is really pushing this. And wind propulsion could help to future-proof your vessels and your fleet. Now, I use this acronym WAVE, which is wind plus the activity or the operations of the vessel, plus the vessel itself, vessel optimization, and finished off with E-fuels, any type of alternative fuel. Now, these numbers, if you're looking at, say, 20% for wind, 20% for your operational changes, 20% for vessel optimization, of course, if it's new build, it's much easier to do. That starts to make this whole concept of renewable energy produced fuels, zero emission fuels, a much easier nut to crack. If we're looking at 40%, not 100%, then we've got a chance to actually start to deliver that. I'm sure a few of you might disagree with me there. Very quickly, technology toolbox. Now, some of you have probably seen my presentation before. If you're interested in any particular one of these technologies, I'm more than happy to talk all day about them. But basically, we've got hard sails, soft sails, kites, which are making inroads back into the industry, rotors, which is probably the one that's breaking into a number of vessels at the moment. We've actually got 6 vessels with 14 rotors, Flettner rotors in operation. These are rotating cylinders. A lot of people think they're actually generating power, electrical power, like a turbine. They're not. They're actually using a small motor, and as the wind hits it, that actually creates a pressure differential on either side of the rotor and generates thrust. So it's a mechanical sail. We also have a thing called a suction wing, which was developed by Jacques Cousteau, for all the older people in the audience. These are, we've just got a containerized version of these, and we've had a couple of installations quite recently. There's also hull form and turbines. Hull form is interesting, where the actual hull is a large sail. Okay? This is a Norwegian project called Vindskip, and as she goes into a headwind, it actually creates lift and thrust. I'm a non-technical person, so pretty much that's magic. Stage of development, because this is the next question. Everyone says, yeah, okay, you've got all these technologies, lovely, lovely, lovely. Where are they in development? Well, pretty much 2018, this year, we're seeing almost all of these coming through sea trials and starting to make that transition into pre-market market. Especially rotors, as I mentioned before. Hard sail's been with us for a while. 2021 to 22, we've got quite a few new builds scheduled. And I will focus on a couple of announcements in a moment, because I've only got 3.5 minutes. Okay, on rotor development, very busy slide. I'm more than happy to provide these slides to you. But what I wanted to show you was, these are the 6 vessels. We've got Maersk, Viking Lines, operational there. We have the Anime version, which is down in the middle there. That's a 64,000 deadweight ton bulker operating in the Indian Ocean and Pacific, I think. She's geared. She's got 4 movable rotors to get them out of the way of the gearing. The Maersk tanker is a 109,000 deadweight ton LR2 product tanker. We have one tanker here, 1 bulker. We have a ferry cruise. We have a roll-on, roll-off ferry, and some general cargo vessels. Actually, the one in the second from the right gained 20% from 1 rotor. She's a relatively large rotor, relatively small vessel, bow installed, but 20% is significant. And this is before these technologies have really been optimized. The next one will be MV Copenhagen and Scanlines, and there's another order that's on the books as well with Norse Power, so that will bring us to 8. Moving on to some other recent news. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is basically in the last 12 months. You'll see some very big names involved here. MOL is one of our members. Chantier de l'Atlantique is actually on my board of executive board. We have down in the bottom left side, they're not actually members at the moment, but I'm working on a project with them. This is a Chinese VLCC, 300,000 deadweight ton, with 2 retractable hard sail sails. She's been in operation for about 12, 14 months with very good results, although the builders are actually keeping that quite close to their chests at the moment, which is understandable. We also have the Neoline one on the right-hand side. We've just had a press release there. EDF has jumped in there and is going to work with them on energy saving certificates. So Renault is one of their cargo partners. These are going to be 2 new build Ro-Ros. They're probably going to start building these within the next couple of months. So contracts are being signed. K-Lines have signed the largest contract for kites or any wind propulsion, up to 50 options based on their first test. So anyway, some quite big players there. I'm going to skip on this. I'm more than happy to talk about this because I've got 45 seconds. These are a few of the projects that we're working on. WASP is an EU project with 5 installations which are going to be monitored over the next 2 years. And I just wanted to finish on this slide. All of these players are involved either with installations, as cargo partners, or on some of the regulatory and technical panels that we've put together to actually remove some of the technical barriers and help facilitate wind propulsion. And you'll see there's a lot of very large shipping names here. All of the class now have guidelines. Class NK and BV are both members of our association as associate members. And a lot of them are actually testing technologies right now. So on that note, I think I'm just about to go off. But if you've got any questions or if you'd like a brochure, one of our brochures, I've got a few of those with me as well. Thank you very much.